The Galactic Council had seen countless wars. They had watched stars burn under orbital bombardments. They had witnessed empires rise from primitive tribes and collapse into dust within a few centuries. Across 10,000 inhabited systems, conflict was as common as gravity itself. Every species eventually learned its place in the galaxy. Humanity was supposed to learn theirs. Instead, they taught the galaxy a lesson no one would ever forget. The first laughter echoed through the council chamber when Earth's environmental report appeared on the central display. A world with crushing weather systems. Predators large enough to tear armored creatures apart. Oceans capable of swallowing entire cities. Tectonic instability. Deadly microorganisms, extreme temperature shifts, volcanic activity, violent storms. The list seemed endless. The representatives of hundreds of alien civilizations stared at the data in disbelief. Some thought the report was corrupted. Others assumed it described a forbidden prison planet. Then came the revelation. It was not a prison world. It was humanity's home. The laughter became louder. To most intelligent species, life evolved only after a planet reached relative stability. Dangerous worlds killed civilizations before they could develop. The galaxy's advanced races came from gentle environments where survival did not require constant struggle. Earth was different. Earth was a death world. The classification itself shocked the Council's scientific divisions. The planet exceeded acceptable danger thresholds in nearly every category. According to established models, intelligent life should never have survived there long enough to discover agriculture. Yet somehow humans had not only survived, they had thrived. The Council archives recorded the event as little more than an amusing curiosity, a strange species from an impossible world. A biological accident, an evolutionary mistake, nothing more. At least that was what they believed. High Observer Varek sat near the center of the vast chamber as the latest discussions continued. His species had governed Council affairs for nearly 2,000 years. Their wisdom was respected throughout known space. Or feared, depending on who was asked. Varek watched the human delegation standing quietly near the outer circle. They were newcomers among ancient powers. Their clothing was simple compared to the elaborate ceremonial armor worn by many established species. The humans seemed unimpressive, small, soft-skinned, physically unremarkable. Several council members had already described them as fragile. Varek agreed. After all, appearance mattered, power mattered. History mattered. Humanity possessed none of those things. Not yet. Their expansion requests should be denied, one representative declared. A chorus of agreement followed. They lack sufficient military capability. They control too few systems. Their biology remains unstable. They represent an unacceptable risk. The humans remain silent. That silence irritated many council members. Most young civilizations begged for recognition. Most pleaded for assistance. Most accepted their place beneath older races. Humanity did neither. They simply listened, they observed, they remembered. Varek noticed that more than once, humans were always watching. Always studying, always learning. It was one of the few traits that made him uneasy. A predator watches, prey reacts. The distinction mattered. Eventually a human representative stepped forward. The chamber quieted. The woman looked around the enormous hall filled with thousands of alien delegates. Her voice was calm. "We seek peaceful expansion." Nothing more. Murmurs spread through the audience. Peaceful expansion. Simple words, reasonable words, yet many species opposed them immediately. Not because humans were dangerous, because they were different. Deathworlders always made the galaxy uncomfortable. There was something unsettling about creatures that evolved under constant threat. Something difficult to predict. The representative continued. Humanity wishes to cooperate with our neighbors. We wish to contribute. Several delegates laughed openly. One species produced a harsh clicking sound that served as their equivalent of amusement. Another activated a holographic display showing Earth's environmental statistics. The chamber erupted again. The mockery was impossible to miss. The human delegation remained motionless. No anger, no protest. No visible reaction. That silence returned, watching, listening, remembering. Varek felt the slightest hint of concern. Not because humanity was powerful, because they were patient. The meeting ended without granting their request. Human expansion would remain restricted, additional oversight would be imposed. Several nearby territories would be transferred to more established species. The decision was final, officially. The humans accepted the ruling. Then they left. Years passed. The galaxy forgot about them. Humanity did not. While the Council focused on ancient rivalries and political maneuvering, Earth continued changing. New colonies appeared beyond expected borders. Trade routes multiplied. Industrial output increased. Scientific discoveries accelerated. Observers reported unusual patterns. Human ships traveled farther than predicted. Human settlements survived conditions considered impossible. Human crews volunteered for missions that most species rejected immediately. The reports accumulated. Most council members ignored them. Varek did not. Every year brought another surprise. Every year humanity exceeded expectations. Every year they adapted. The Death Worlders kept growing stronger. Still, few considered them a threat. That assumption would prove catastrophic. The first signs appeared along the frontier. A coalition of powerful alien states controlled several strategic systems bordering human territory. Resources were abundant there. Trade routes were valuable. Control meant influence. Influence meant power. Human expansion complicated existing arrangements. Some leaders demanded action. Others suggested negotiation. A smaller group proposed something far more dangerous: war. The argument seemed simple enough. Humanity remained young. Their fleet was smaller. Their territory was limited. Their economy could not rival ancient civilizations. A quick campaign would force compliance. The matter would be settled within months, perhaps weeks. Many military analysts agreed. The projections looked convincing. Victory percentages exceeded 98%. Human defeat appeared inevitable. The coalition leaders approved military preparations. Officially, it was a policing action, an enforcement operation, a necessary correction. Unofficially, it was an invasion. The council debated the issue briefly. Some objected. Most remained neutral. Very few cared enough to intervene. After all, humanity was only one species among thousands. History suggested the outcome was obvious. History had never encountered humans before. Far from the council chamber, deep within human-controlled space, warning signals spread across military networks. Long-range sensors detected fleet movements. Supply routes changed. Strategic formations appeared near contested borders. Human intelligence agencies reached the same conclusion within hours. War was coming. The reports arrived at command centers across dozens of worlds. Military officers studied the data. Civilian leaders reviewed the evidence. Emergency meetings began immediately. There was fear. There was concern. There was uncertainty. But there was no panic. Humanity had faced extinction threats before, many times: ice ages, plagues, world wars. Natural disasters, predators, famine. Every generation inherited new dangers. Every generation survived. The species had been practicing for adversity since the beginning of its existence. That was something the galaxy never understood. Death World evolution creates strange habits. Humans did not view impossible odds the same way other species did. They never had. On Earth, survival itself had always been unlikely. Yet they survived anyway. Across the frontier, coalition fleets assembled in numbers that darkened entire regions of space. Thousands of warships, millions of personnel, enough firepower to erase civilizations. Commanders celebrated before the fighting even began. Victory seemed guaranteed. News of the mobilization spread rapidly through the galaxy. Markets reacted. Governments prepared statements. Observers predicted humanity's surrender. Some even discussed how human territory would be divided after the conflict. The war had not started. The outcome already seemed decided. In the council chamber, High Observer Varek reviewed the latest intelligence reports alone. One detail continued bothering him: human behavior. Everything suggested they should be negotiating desperately, seeking allies, preparing evacuation plans. Instead, something else was happening. Human shipyards were operating continuously. Recruitment numbers were rising. Supply production had reached unprecedented levels. Most concerning of all, intercepted communications revealed an emotion Varric had not expected. Determination, not fear. Not desperation, determination. He stared at a report from one of the frontier systems. A coalition commander had transmitted a warning to nearby human colonies. Surrender immediately. Resistance is pointless. The message had received only one response. A single sentence. Short, simple, chilling. Varric read it again, then a third time. For the first time in many years, genuine unease settled into his thoughts, because the humans had not denied the coming war. They had not pleaded for peace. They had not threatened retaliation. They had simply replied, "You should have learned why Death World species survive." At that exact moment, emergency alerts suddenly erupted throughout the council chamber. Red warning symbols flashed across every display. Military channels opened simultaneously. Fleet reports flooded the network. Confused voices filled the air. Something had happened at the border. Something unexpected. Something impossible. As delegates rushed toward their terminals and officers demanded answers, Varric stared at the incoming data with growing horror. The war had begun. And the first battle reports made no sense at all. The first reports arriving at the Galactic Council were dismissed as sensor failures. That explanation lasted less than 3 minutes. Then more reports arrived. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Entire command networks flooded with contradictory information from the frontier. Coalition fleets that had entered human territory expecting a simple show of force were reporting unexpected resistance. Not heavy resistance. Not overwhelming resistance, something stranger. Human forces were appearing where they should not have been. Ships emerged from routes that coalition navigators considered unusable. Fleets crossed regions of space classified as hazardous. Supply convoys traveled through unstable gravitational corridors that most species avoided entirely. Military analysts stared at the data in confusion. The routes were real. The dangers were real. Yet humans treated them as routine travel paths. Inside the council chamber, specialists worked desperately to explain the impossible. Their navigators must be making errors. They are not. The readings are inaccurate. They are not. Then how are human vessels surviving those sectors? No one had an answer. The problem was not human technology. It was human thinking. For thousands of years, the galaxy had learned to avoid danger. Humans learned to live inside it. That difference was becoming increasingly important. Far beyond the frontier, on a world orbiting a red dwarf star, workers continued construction around the clock. The colony was barely 20 years old. The atmosphere was unstable. Dust storms could strip exposed machinery apart within hours. Temperatures shifted violently between day and night. Most species would have abandoned the settlement. Humans expanded it. Massive industrial complexes rose from the rocky landscape. Mining operations reached deeper every month. New habitats appeared across the horizon. The colonists hardly noticed conditions that would horrify most alien observers. For them, difficulty was normal. A young technician stepped outside a maintenance shelter and looked toward the darkening sky. Warning sirens echoed across the settlement. Another storm front was approaching. The winds would likely exceed safe operating limits. Nearby alien contractors immediately retreated indoors. The human workers simply secured their equipment and continued preparing the site. One contractor watched in disbelief. "You are still working?" The technician shrugged. "We've seen worse." The alien assumed it was a joke. It was not. Throughout human space, similar scenes unfolded every day. Entire generations had been raised on worlds that challenged survival constantly. Earth remained the greatest example. Council archives contained countless records describing its hazards: gigantic oceans, violent weather systems, predators, disease, natural disasters, unpredictable ecosystems. To alien scientists, the list resembled a catalog of extinction events. To humans, it was simply home. The realization was beginning to spread through military circles. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength was not its ships. Perhaps it was not its weapons. Perhaps it was the mindset created by a death world. A species raised in constant adversity develops differently. Problems become challenges, challenges become opportunities. Fear becomes preparation, preparation becomes survival, and survival becomes confidence. That confidence unsettled many coalition commanders. The first days of the campaign produced results nobody expected. Human forces rarely fought where predictions suggested. When coalition fleets concentrated their strength, humans vanished. When commanders advanced into seemingly secure sectors, human vessels appeared unexpectedly. Supply calculations became unreliable. Timetables collapsed. Communication delays increased. Every successful operation seemed to create two new problems. It felt less like fighting a conventional enemy and more like chasing a storm. High Observer Varek reviewed the growing mountain of reports with increasing concern. The casualty figures remained relatively low. The strategic situation remained manageable. Yet something about the pattern disturbed him. Humanity was not acting like a civilization facing extinction. According to every historical model, younger species under this kind of pressure should become desperate. Humans were becoming organized. More organized than before. Factories expanded production. Civilian populations accepted emergency restrictions with surprising speed. Transportation networks adapted. Research divisions accelerated development projects. Entire sectors of human society appeared to be synchronizing around a common goal. Varek found that deeply troubling. Ancient civilizations often became comfortable. Comfort produced caution. Caution produced hesitation. Humans seemed different. Pressure appeared to make them stronger. The observer remembered a report from years earlier, a cultural study conducted by xenologists. At the time it had seemed unimportant. Now it felt strangely relevant. One sentence stood out. Human history demonstrates a recurring pattern of unity during external threats. The galaxy had largely ignored that conclusion. Now they were witnessing it firsthand. Meanwhile, deep within coalition territory, another problem emerged. Intelligence officers began analyzing captured human equipment. They expected advanced technology. Instead, they discovered something unexpected: practicality. Human systems were rarely elegant. They were rarely beautiful. Many alien engineers even described them as crude. Yet they worked, and they kept working. Damaged systems remained operational. Redundant backups activated automatically. Components could be repaired quickly using locally available materials. Human designs seemed built around one assumption: things would go wrong. The philosophy confused alien researchers. Most advanced species built equipment to avoid failure. Humans built equipment expecting failure. The distinction mattered, particularly during wartime. As reports spread, public interest throughout the galaxy increased dramatically. News networks covered every development. Civilian observers followed fleet movements obsessively. Experts debated humanity's chances. Many still predicted eventual defeat. Coalition resources remained vastly superior. Their fleets were larger, their economies were older, their territory was broader. Logic suggested they would prevail. Yet confidence was fading, because logic had predicted a quick victory. And nothing about the war felt quick anymore. On Earth itself, the mood remained surprisingly calm. Cities continued functioning. Schools remained open, industries operated continuously, life carried on. But beneath the surface, preparations accelerated. Recruitment centers processed volunteers in unprecedented numbers. Training facilities expanded capacity. Manufacturing output reached historic records. Every continent contributed resources. Every colony contributed personnel. The species was mobilizing, not out of panic, out of habit. Human history had prepared them for uncertainty. Generation after generation had learned that survival required effort. Now that lesson was being applied on an interstellar scale. Far above Earth, orbital shipyards glowed against the darkness of space. New vessels emerged from construction platforms daily. Cargo ships became support craft. Mining vessels received military upgrades. Civilian industries adapted to wartime demands. The transformation happened with astonishing speed. Alien observers struggled to understand it. Human civilization appeared flexible in ways few others were. Structures changed. Systems adapted. People improvised. Nothing remained static. One intelligence analyst studying the phenomenon eventually summarized it in a single sentence. Humans treat change like a natural environment. The report circulated widely. Many dismissed it. Others found it alarmingly accurate. Weeks passed, then months. The war continued expanding. Neither side achieved a decisive breakthrough. Coalition commanders grew frustrated. Every projection required revision. Every estimate became unreliable. Human responses remained difficult to predict. The Death World species refused to behave according to accepted models. At the same time, strange rumors began spreading across military channels. Stories of isolated human settlements surviving impossible conditions. Stories of crews enduring situations that should have broken them. Stories of frontier colonies continuing operations despite disasters that would force most evacuations. Many reports were exaggerated, some were false. Enough were true to create concern, because they all pointed toward the same conclusion. Human resilience was not propaganda. It was real, and nobody knew where its limits were. Back in the council chamber, Varek stood before a massive holographic display showing the expanding conflict. Dozens of systems blinked across the map, trade routes shifted constantly, fleet positions changed daily. The war was growing larger, more expensive, more complicated, exactly the opposite of what had been promised. A junior analyst approached cautiously. "There is something else, observer." Varek turned. "What is it?" The analyst hesitated. "Long-range reconnaissance has discovered new human construction projects. Military installations?" "No." The analyst looked uncomfortable. "Colonies?" Varek frowned. "Colonies? Yes." The answer made no sense. Humanity was already fighting a major war. Resources should have been redirected toward defense. Expansion should have slowed. Instead, new settlements continued appearing beyond explored sectors. Varek stared at the report. The locations were astonishing. Many existed in regions considered unsuitable for intelligent life. Several bordered hazardous stellar phenomena. Others occupied worlds previously rejected by multiple species. Human settlers had accepted them anyway. The observer felt a growing chill. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. The galaxy saw danger and turned away. Humans saw danger and moved closer. And if that instinct extended beyond colonization into warfare, then the coalition might be facing a problem far larger than anyone realized. As fresh intelligence poured into the chamber, another alarming report arrived from the frontier. A coalition task force had entered a remote sector expecting to find abandoned mining facilities. Instead, they discovered something hidden among asteroid fields and unstable radiation zones. A human installation, massive, secret, and far older than it should have been. No records mentioned its existence, no surveys had detected it. No intelligence agencies had reported it. Yet there it was, waiting, watching, growing in silence for years. As commanders rushed to investigate, encrypted human transmissions suddenly flooded nearby networks. Across dozens of systems, the same message appeared. Not a threat, not a warning. A declaration. And when translators finally completed their work, every officer reading the message felt the same uneasy sensation. Because for the first time since the war began, humanity sounded completely confident. As though everything that had happened so far was only the beginning. For the first time in generations, uncertainty spread through the Galactic Council. The confidence that had existed before the war was fading. Coalition leaders still controlled more ships. They still possessed greater territory. They still commanded ancient fleets that had dominated space for centuries. Yet every new report seemed to raise more questions than answers. The secret installation discovered among the asteroid fields became the center of attention. Reconnaissance drones circled cautiously around the structure. Long-range scans revealed an enormous complex hidden inside a maze of radioactive debris and unstable gravitational distortions. The location itself should have made construction impossible. Most species would never have attempted it. Humans had built an entire industrial network there. The discovery triggered immediate debates across Coalition Command. Some argued it was a weapons facility, others believed it was a logistics hub. Several intelligence officers suggested it might be a research center. Nobody knew for certain. That uncertainty created fear. Fear created caution, and caution slowed operations. Humanity seemed to understand that perfectly. Every day the coalition spent investigating mysteries was a day not spent advancing. On a distant observation station overlooking the frontier, an alien journalist named Terrell studied incoming reports with growing fascination. The war had originally seemed straightforward. A young civilization challenged powerful neighbors responded. History repeated itself, except history had stopped cooperating. Terrell interviewed soldiers, traders, scientists, and refugees from dozens of species. Again and again, similar stories emerged. Humans behaved differently from anyone else. One cargo captain described an incident that had become famous across several sectors. His vessel had suffered a catastrophic reactor malfunction while crossing an isolated region of space. The nearest rescue ships were days away. Survival odds had been minimal. Then a human mining crew arrived. Their vessel was old, damaged, barely presentable. Yet they somehow repaired critical systems using equipment that should not have been compatible. The captain still remembered asking how they managed it. The human engineer had simply smiled. "We fixed worse." That phrase appeared constantly in reports involving humans. "We fixed worse, we've survived worse, we've seen worse." To most species, such statements sounded impossible. To humans, they seemed completely normal. Terrell began investigating Earth's history. The deeper he looked, the stranger humanity became. Ancient wars, natural disasters, global pandemics, economic collapses, environmental crises. Again and again, human civilization approached catastrophe. Again and again, it survived, not perfectly, not without losses, but it endured. The pattern stretched back thousands of years. Humanity never appeared unstoppable. That was the strange part. They simply refused to stay down. Meanwhile, far from the political centers of the galaxy, a coalition patrol entered a remote system near human territory. The mission seemed routine. Survey the region, monitor shipping activity, report unusual developments. Nothing about the assignment appeared dangerous. Then the storm arrived. Not a weather storm, a stellar storm. Charged particles erupted from a nearby star with terrifying intensity. Warning systems activated instantly. The patrol commander ordered an emergency withdrawal. Unfortunately, the storm moved faster than expected. Within minutes, communications began failing, sensors degraded. Navigation systems produced conflicting data. Panic spread through the fleet. Such conditions had destroyed ships before. Then another signal appeared, human. A nearby human colony transmitted updated navigation routes and emergency guidance. The commander hesitated. Accepting assistance from the enemy seemed unwise. Rejecting it seemed suicidal. Eventually, survival won the argument. The patrol followed the instructions. Hours later, every vessel emerged safely. The route provided by the humans had threaded directly through regions the patrol's own computers labeled too dangerous. Yet it worked. When the commander reviewed the recordings afterward, disbelief spread throughout the fleet. The humans had not merely survived the stellar storms, they routinely operated inside them. Mining stations, research outposts, navigation relays. Entire communities existed within environments most species considered lethal. The report reached coalition headquarters days later. Several officials dismissed it immediately. Others found it deeply concerning. Because once again, humans were demonstrating something uncomfortable. Their tolerance for danger was far beyond galactic norms. Back on Earth, preparations continued. Across deserts, mountains, forests, oceans, and orbital habitats, millions of people contributed to the growing war effort. Not everyone served in fleets. Not everyone carried weapons. Many worked in factories. Many developed technology. Many transported supplies. The scale of cooperation surprised outside observers. Humanity contained hundreds of cultures, governments, and traditions. Alien experts expected internal conflict. Instead, they witnessed remarkable coordination. Differences remained. Arguments continued. Political debates never disappeared. Yet, when external pressure increased, humanity displayed an unusual ability to focus on shared goals. A coalition sociologist studying the phenomenon eventually reached an uncomfortable conclusion. Human diversity might actually be one of their strengths. Most species evolved under relatively stable conditions. Humanity evolved amid constant change. Adaptation became part of their identity. As a result, flexibility existed throughout their civilization. The war was revealing that trait more clearly every day. At the same time, misunderstandings between humans and aliens continued creating tension. One incident became particularly famous. A coalition reconnaissance team landed on a newly established human colony world. The environment was considered extremely hazardous. Powerful predators dominated the ecosystem. Toxic vegetation covered vast regions. Violent storms occurred weekly. The reconnaissance team assumed the colony was temporary, perhaps an emergency settlement, perhaps a scientific outpost. Instead, they discovered families, schools, businesses, parks, children playing outside. The visitors were horrified. They demanded to know why civilians lived in such dangerous conditions. The local human administrator looked genuinely confused. Dangerous? The alien officer pointed toward a massive predator moving across distant hills. The administrator nodded. Oh, that creature could kill multiple adults. Probably. And you allow children outside? The administrator glanced toward the nearby playground. They know not to approach it. The alien delegation spent the rest of the visit in complete disbelief. Their reports circulated widely afterward. For many species, it became the moment they truly understood humanity. Humans did not eliminate every danger. They learned how to coexist with it. The distinction seemed small. In reality, it was enormous. Near the front lines, another subplot was unfolding. A young coalition intelligence officer named Reth became obsessed with understanding human strategy. Nothing made sense. Traditional military doctrine predicted certain responses. Humans frequently ignored them. Expected retreats became counterattacks. Apparent weaknesses became traps. Obvious targets turned out to be distractions. Weeks of analysis produced only frustration. Then Reth discovered something hidden within historical records. Human military thinking often emphasized adaptation over prediction. Instead of following rigid plans, commanders adjusted continuously. Instead of seeking perfect conditions, they worked with whatever conditions existed. It was a philosophy born from life on a death world. Earth rarely rewarded perfect plans. Weather changed. Circumstances changed. Unexpected problems appeared constantly. Human institutions learned to improvise because reality demanded it. Reth suddenly realized why coalition projections kept failing. Their models assumed humans would behave like everyone else. Humans never had. Elsewhere, mysterious developments continued surrounding the hidden installation discovered in the asteroid field. Long-range monitoring revealed increasing activity. Freighters arrived constantly. Construction platforms expanded. Energy readings climbed steadily. Yet the purpose of the facility remained unclear. Coalition spies attempted infiltration. None succeeded. Some disappeared completely. Others returned with fragmented information that only deepened the mystery. The installation seemed connected to several other secret projects scattered across human space. Projects that had existed long before the war began. That realization disturbed intelligence agencies most of all. Humans had apparently been preparing for something, not necessarily this conflict, but something. The implications were difficult to ignore. While many species enjoyed centuries of stability, humanity appeared to have spent those same centuries preparing for future uncertainty, as if expecting challenges was simply part of their culture. High Observer Varek spent long nights reviewing classified intelligence. The more he learned, the less comfortable he became. The war itself was troubling enough. The deeper issue was philosophical. The Council had always assumed progress reduced hardship. Reduced hardship produced stability. Stability produced civilization. Humanity challenged that assumption. Their civilization seemed shaped by hardship rather than protected from it, and that raised a dangerous question. What happens when a species forged by adversity enters a galaxy built around comfort? The answer remained unclear. Yet signs were appearing everywhere: military stalemates, economic disruptions, political disagreements, public fascination with humanity. The entire balance of galactic society seemed to be shifting. Then another report arrived, this one from deep beyond explored space. A long-range exploration vessel had detected human activity far outside known territory. The discovery should have been impossible. Those regions contained unstable anomalies, dangerous radiation fields, and navigation hazards severe enough to discourage exploration. Yet evidence suggested humans had been operating there for years. Maybe decades. No one knew why. No one knew what they had found. As scientists rushed to verify the information, encrypted transmissions suddenly emerged from the distant frontier. The signal originated somewhere beyond mapped space. Human identification codes confirmed its authenticity. The message reached military headquarters, research institutes, and eventually the Galactic Council itself. When translators completed their work, silence filled every room where it was read, because the transmission contained only 7 words. 7 simple words that raised more questions than answers. We found something. It found us too. And before anyone could investigate further, all communication from the distant region went completely silent. The 7-word transmission changed everything. For weeks, the message dominated discussions across the Galactic Council. Scientists argued over its meaning. Military leaders demanded investigations. News networks replayed the words endlessly. We found something. It found us too. No further communication arrived. The exploration vessel remained silent. Every relay station along the route reported the same result: nothing. The crew had vanished into the darkness beyond explored space. For most civilizations, the mystery would have remained exactly that: a mystery. Humanity treated it differently. Within days, deep space tracking arrays detected movement, then more movement, then entire fleets. Human vessels were heading toward the unexplored frontier, not one fleet. Not 2, dozens. Coalition analysts stared at the data in disbelief. The war was still ongoing. The frontier remained unstable. Resources were already stretched. Yet humanity was committing massive assets to a region associated with an unknown threat. The decision appeared reckless. Many alien commanders assumed panic had finally overcome human judgment. High Observer Varek was not convinced. He had spent too many months studying humanity. Humans rarely moved without purpose. If they were sending fleets into the unknown, they believed the risk justified it. That thought unsettled him more than the mystery itself. Across human space, something was changing. The shift was difficult to measure at first. Factories increased production beyond wartime levels. Research centers operated around the clock. Shipyards expanded faster than ever before. Even civilian populations seemed aware that events were approaching a critical moment. Nobody knew exactly what waited beyond explored space. But everyone understood one thing. The missing explorers had discovered something important. Something capable of frightening people who spent their lives on the frontier. That realization alone was enough. Far beyond the Council's influence, the hidden installation inside the asteroid field became the center of unprecedented activity. Cargo vessels arrived constantly. Massive structures emerged from construction docks. Energy output climbed higher every day. Coalition surveillance struggled to keep pace. The facility was no longer hiding, it was preparing. Preparing for what remained unclear. The uncertainty drove military planners mad. One intelligence briefing described the situation bluntly. "We do not understand their objectives." That statement would have been embarrassing under normal circumstances. Now, it was simply honest. The coalition still possessed superior numbers, yet they seemed to know less about the conflict than the species they were fighting. Meanwhile, stories about humanity continued spreading throughout the galaxy. Some sounded impossible, others sounded ridiculous. Yet enough proved true to gain credibility. A damaged human colony survived 6 months after losing contact with supply networks. A transport crew crossed an unstable anomaly field to rescue stranded civilians. Engineers restored an abandoned orbital station that experts declared beyond repair. Individually, the incidents appeared minor. Together they revealed a pattern. Humans never seemed to accept impossible situations. They acknowledged danger. They acknowledged difficulty. Then they worked anyway. Alien observers slowly began realizing how unusual that mindset truly was. Most species evolved in environments where survival depended on avoiding risk. Humanity evolved in an environment where risk was unavoidable. The difference shaped everything. On Earth, storms arrived whether people wanted them or not. Predators hunted regardless of preference. Natural disasters ignored opinions. The species survived by adapting. Generation after generation, century after century, millennium after millennium. Now that same mentality was being applied to interstellar civilization, and the galaxy was struggling to comprehend the results. The coalition felt the consequences first. Several major offensives collapsed unexpectedly, not because human fleets destroyed them, because human flexibility disrupted them. Supply routes changed. Defenses appeared in unexpected locations. Civilian infrastructure adapted rapidly. Every challenge seemed to strengthen human coordination. One frustrated coalition commander summarized the problem during a classified meeting. They treat setbacks like training exercises. No one laughed, because everyone knew what he meant. Elsewhere, journalist Terrell continued documenting the conflict. The deeper he investigated, the more fascinated he became. His latest project focused on frontier settlers, individuals living on worlds other species considered nearly uninhabitable. He expected stories about hardship. Instead, he found stories about opportunity. One farmer proudly described cultivating crops in soil previously declared unusable. A mining supervisor explained how dangerous geological activity created valuable resources. A research team celebrated the discovery of life forms thriving inside toxic environments. Again and again, humans demonstrated the same perspective. Where others saw obstacles, they saw possibilities. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Terrell eventually published a controversial article. Its title spread rapidly across galactic media. Humanity does not fear the death world. Humanity becomes it. The phrase sparked endless debate. Many considered it exaggerated. Others thought it frighteningly accurate. Back in the council chamber, High Observer Varek studied another wave of intelligence reports. For months, he had searched for a weakness, some flaw hidden beneath humanity's resilience. Every civilization possessed one. Yet the deeper he looked, the harder it became to identify. Humanity certainly had limitations. Their technology was not always superior. Their resources were not unlimited. Their politics could be chaotic. Their society contained disagreements and imperfections. But somehow those weaknesses failed to produce collapse. Instead, they produced adaptation. As if pressure forced humanity to evolve faster. The realization left Varek increasingly uneasy, because the coalition's original strategy depended on predictable reactions. Humans remained stubbornly unpredictable. Then another transmission arrived from beyond explored space. This one lasted only seconds. The signal quality was terrible. Fragments of information emerged through layers of interference. Most of it was unusable. One section survived translation, and it immediately triggered emergency meetings across the galaxy. The message contained a warning, not from military personnel, not from government officials, from the missing exploration crew. The words were brief. Do not underestimate scale. That was all. No explanation followed. No coordinates, no details, just a warning. Do not underestimate scale. Scientists immediately began debating possible meanings. Military analysts produced dozens of theories. None provided reassurance. The phrase suggested something enormous, something beyond existing expectations, something capable of threatening experienced explorers. For the first time since the war began, even coalition leaders stopped focusing entirely on humanity. Their attention shifted toward the unknown frontier. Humanity noticed and kept moving. Fleet after fleet disappeared into deep space. Volunteers continued arriving. Construction continued accelerating. The hidden asteroid installation expanded further. Everything pointed toward a coordinated effort years in the making. The possibility terrified intelligence agencies. What if the secret projects were connected? What if humanity had known something existed beyond explored space long before the transmission arrived? No evidence confirmed the theory. Yet it refused to disappear, because human actions increasingly suggested preparation rather than reaction. Months passed. The war remained unresolved, the mystery deepened, and then came the breakthrough. A long-range reconnaissance probe finally returned from the frontier. The probe was heavily damaged. Several systems had failed completely. Data recovery required days of work. By the time technicians completed analysis, anticipation had reached unprecedented levels. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to review the findings. The images appeared on enormous displays. Silence filled the chamber. The photographs showed regions of space unlike anything in existing records. Vast structures, impossible distances. Objects so large that scale became difficult to comprehend. Several observers initially assumed sensor malfunction. Then additional images appeared. Then more. Every angle confirmed the same conclusion. The missing explorers had discovered something ancient, something massive, something hidden beyond the edges of known civilization. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then the room erupted into chaos. Questions flew in every direction. Arguments began instantly. Military officers demanded classifications. Scientists demanded access. Political leaders demanded explanations. No explanations existed, only uncertainty and growing concern, because one detail stood out above everything else. The structures showed signs of recent activity. Whatever existed out there was not dormant, it was awake. The implications spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Public attention shifted overnight. News networks abandoned ordinary programming. Markets fluctuated wildly. Entire governments activated emergency planning committees. For the first time in living memory, the Galactic Council faced a challenge larger than politics, larger than territorial disputes, larger than war, and humanity appeared to be the only civilization already moving toward it. That realization changed perceptions dramatically. Species that once mocked humanity began studying them. Species that once dismissed them began listening. Species that once viewed Deathworlders as reckless began wondering if resilience might have value after all. The transformation was subtle but undeniable. Respect was beginning to replace ridicule. Not everywhere, not yet, but the change had started. And it accelerated with every new report. Far beyond known space, human fleets continued advancing toward the mystery. The journey was dangerous. Navigation hazards increased constantly. Communication delays worsened. Several ships suffered damage. None turned back. Millions across human space followed updates anxiously. Families watched, workers watched, colonists watched. Everyone understood that history was approaching a turning point. No one knew what waited ahead, but they knew humanity would face it together. As the leading fleet approached the outer boundary of the unexplored region, long-range sensors suddenly detected movement, not debris. Not natural phenomena, movement, structured, organized, deliberate. The bridge crews fell silent. Fresh data streamed across every display. The unknown objects were heading toward them, and their numbers were growing with every scan. Back in the council chamber, emergency alerts activated simultaneously across hundreds of systems. The information arriving from the frontier carried only one unmistakable conclusion. The thing humanity had found was finally coming closer. And for the first time, the entire galaxy would soon discover why the missing explorers had sounded afraid. The first clear images from the frontier stunned the galaxy. The unknown objects moving toward the human fleets were not warships. They were cities. Entire cities drifting through deep space. Each structure dwarfed the largest vessels ever constructed by known civilizations. They stretched for hundreds of kilometers, surrounded by countless smaller craft moving in organized formations. Silence spread through command centers across the galaxy. No one had expected this. No one had imagined anything on such a scale. The missing exploration crew's warning suddenly made perfect sense. Do not underestimate scale. Human reconnaissance vessels maintained observation distance as fresh data poured in. Advanced sensors revealed evidence of agriculture, habitation zones, transportation systems, and industrial networks. Whatever these structures were, they were not military fleets. They were homes. Entire populations lived within them. The discovery raised even more questions. Who built them? How long had they existed? Why had they remained hidden beyond explored space? Most importantly, why were they moving toward known territory now? The answer arrived 3 days later. A transmission. Unlike anything previously received, the signal was ancient yet perfectly understandable after translation. It originated from the massive drifting cities themselves. The message was directed to everyone, not just humanity, not just the Galactic Council, everyone. We seek contact, we seek trade, we seek knowledge. We detected expanding civilizations and chose to approach peacefully. Across the galaxy, disbelief quickly turned into embarrassment. Entire emergency meetings stopped mid-conversation. Military alerts were reviewed. Invasion theories collapsed overnight. The mysterious civilization was not preparing for conquest. They were introducing themselves. The reaction inside the Galactic Council chamber was difficult to describe. Relief mixed with confusion, confusion mixed with shame. Because while the unknown civilization approached peacefully, the galaxy remained trapped in another conflict entirely. The war against humanity. High Observer Varric stood quietly as reports continued arriving. Human fleets had reached the newcomers first. Not because humans possessed superior technology. Not because they were stronger. Because they were willing to travel into places others avoided. The same death world mentality that had caused the Council to mock humanity now positioned them at the center of the most important first contact in galactic history. The irony was impossible to ignore. As diplomatic channels opened, additional information emerged. The drifting civilization had traveled for centuries through regions considered too dangerous by most species. Radiation zones, anomaly fields, unstable stellar regions. Hazards that frightened conventional explorers. To them, such routes were simply part of the journey. The similarities with humanity became immediately obvious. Though separated by unimaginable distances and entirely different evolutionary paths, both civilizations shared one important trait. They adapted to harsh environments instead of avoiding them. That realization changed how many aliens viewed humans. For generations, Deathworlders had been considered reckless, primitive, dangerous. Now those same traits appeared remarkably useful. Meanwhile, coalition leaders faced a growing crisis. Public support for the war was collapsing. Citizens across multiple systems questioned why resources were being wasted fighting humanity while history unfolded on the frontier. Economic pressure increased. Political pressure increased. Military pressure increased. The coalition had expected a quick victory. Instead, they had gained a costly stalemate and a damaged reputation. Humanity, meanwhile, continued doing what it had done since the beginning. Adapting, human shipyards assisted diplomatic efforts. Human colonies provided logistical support. Human researchers collaborated with scientists from every major civilization. The same species once mocked inside the council chamber had become a bridge between worlds. Journalist Terrell documented every moment. His reports became some of the most widely viewed broadcasts in galactic history. One particular interview gained legendary status. A young alien student asked a human frontier pilot why humans always enter dangerous regions first. The pilot thought for a moment before answering. Someone has to go. The simplicity of the response spread throughout the galaxy. Someone has to go. To many species, danger represented a barrier. To humans, danger represented a challenge waiting for a solution. That attitude had shaped their entire history. It had carried them across oceans, across continents, across planets, and eventually across the stars. Months later, negotiations finally began between humanity and coalition leaders. The talks were difficult. Years of mistrust could not disappear instantly. Yet circumstances had changed. Everyone knew it. The galaxy was entering a new era. Continuing an unnecessary war no longer made sense. High Observer Varric personally attended the final diplomatic session. He remembered the day humanity first entered the council chamber. He remembered the laughter, the dismissive comments, The arrogance, looking back, he understood the mistake. The council had judged humans according to familiar standards. They measured fleet size, territory, age, political influence. They failed to measure resilience. They failed to measure determination. They failed to understand what life on a death world creates. Eventually, the negotiations reached their conclusion. The war ended. Not through conquest, not through destruction, but through recognition. Humanity retained its territories. Expansion restrictions were removed. Trade agreements expanded, scientific cooperation increased. For the first time, humans were treated as equals rather than curiosities. The announcement echoed across thousands of worlds. Celebrations followed, relief followed, hope followed. Yet perhaps the most important changes were not political, they were cultural. Throughout the galaxy, educational institutions updated their historical records. Military academies revised strategic theories. Scientific organizations reevaluated assumptions about intelligent life. The old belief that comfort created strength began fading. Humanity had proven something different. Growth often comes from challenge. Strength often comes from adversity. Civilizations become resilient when forced to overcome difficulties rather than avoid them. That lesson spread far beyond Earth. On distant colonies, children learned about the war and its aftermath. They learned how humanity survived because generations refused to surrender to hardship. They learned how explorers ventured beyond known space when others hesitated. They learned how cooperation accomplished more than fear. Even the mysterious drifting civilization became part of that story. Trade flourished between the newcomers and existing powers. Knowledge flowed across borders. Scientific breakthroughs accelerated. New exploration projects launched deeper into the galaxy than ever before. Human crews volunteered for many of them. Of course they did. Nobody was surprised anymore. Years later, High Observer Varek stood once again inside the council chamber. The room looked different. Not physically, philosophically. Human representatives occupied respected positions among the delegates. Former enemies worked alongside one another. The galaxy had changed. A display appeared at the center of the chamber. It showed Earth, blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. The infamous Death World. The planet that should never have produced an interstellar civilization according to countless scientific models, yet it had. Against the odds. Against expectations. Against every prediction, Varek found himself smiling. Not because humanity was perfect. No civilization was, humans still argued. Still made mistakes, still faced challenges, but they never stopped moving forward. That was their true strength. Not their ships, not their technology, not their military, their persistence. The willingness to face impossible situations and continue anyway. The willingness to adapt, to learn, to endure, to hope. As new exploration missions prepared to depart beyond known space, humanity once again volunteered to lead the way. Some things never changed. And perhaps that was for the best. The galaxy no longer laughed when humans entered dangerous territory. The galaxy watched with curiosity instead. Because experience had taught everyone the same lesson. If a path looked impossible, a human might find a way through it. If a challenge seemed overwhelming, a human might discover a solution. If darkness waited beyond the horizon, a human would probably investigate it. That was the legacy of a Death World species. Humanity had not won because they were the strongest civilization. They had won because they refused to quit. And in the end, the Galactic Council finally understood the truth they should have recognized from the beginning. The dangerous world called Earth had never made humanity weaker. It had made them resilient. The hardships of their home had forged explorers, builders, survivors, and dreamers. The galaxy mocked them for coming from a death world. The galaxy started a war believing humans would break. Instead, humanity endured. And by enduring, they changed the future of every civilization among the stars. For as long as intelligent life crossed the galaxy, one lesson would remain. Never underestimate a species that learned survival on a world determined to challenge them every single day. Because humanity's greatest weapon was never fear. It was the decision to keep moving forward. No matter what waited in the dark. Thanks for watching this story. If you enjoyed this HFY science fiction adventure, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more epic stories.